deep. You're Ken Kell. You're the hockey guy. I go, I don't know anything about this guy.
This is The Conversation Line, presented by Fieger Law.
Hi again, Red Wing fans, and welcome to another edition of The Conversation Line. I'm your radio play-by-play host, Ken Kell, and I'm joined with a very special guest today, Austin Watson. And out of all the players that I actually want to talk to, when I had a chance to do this interview with you, Austin, it's like, all right, because your personality is like unlike anybody else. I mean, it's a pleasure having you here.
I appreciate it. It's good to be on with you. I don't know, maybe at the end of some long days, you guys might have a different opinion on my personality and vocalizing just about everything. But yeah, it normally comes across pretty good.
You know, you came up from Grand Rapids, and I was just excited. And every time I saw you walking off the morning skate or getting on the bus, you're always talking with different people. You're yucking it up with everybody. I mean, is that part of your DNA? Because it seems like you're always enjoying talking to people.
You know what? It must be, because I don't think of it. I just kind of do. You know, but it's a privilege to play in this league and to travel around and to meet so many different people. I think, you know, if you talk to people, one of the coolest things is the relationships that you build and the people that you get to meet along the way, right? So no point in letting time pass without asking guys some questions, busting them up a little bit. And, you know, everybody has different roles, right? So, you know, some of the big boys, they play a lot of minutes, they get a little bit more tired. You know, I'm playing less minutes and have a different role. So, you know, to bring a little bit of energy and juice to the situation is kind of something that, you know, I can provide, and, you know, something that you can take off different guys' plates as well.
You know, I think of Kevin Hodson. He was a goaltender here for many years, and he was a backup goaltender in his career, but he always kept the locker room loose. Are you one of those guys?
I think so. I think, you know, whether it's loose, there's some timing to everything as well, right? There's different situations that go on, whether it be a practice day or during the game. And, you know, I feel like I have a good feel for it about just kind of where the room is at and kind of what the situation is. So, you know, something about you really kind of have to pay attention to what's going on. And, you know, it's funny, again, you know, playing a little bit less minutes than other guys, to stay engaged, and like I know exactly what's going on in the game at all times. You know what's happening, what the feel is, and you kind of have to just play off that. You know, there's times to be where you need to be a little bit more loose, but then there's also times where, you know, you need to buckle up a little bit, and you can vocalize that as well. So just depends on the situation, depends on what the feel is, and you know, I feel like I have a good sense for what that is.
Hockey players always enjoy a good joke, and it seems like there's a lot of practical jokers out there. Any experience with practical jokes in the locker room?
Not a big practical joker. I kind of I don't want to call it self-demeaning, but like a lot of times guys will say they probably get a laugh for the stuff that I either do or say that's not really intended to be a joke, just kind of my day-to-day process. I'm not huge on, I don't have jokes for you. Probably the best guy with jokes I've ever played with is Nick Paul, who's in Tampa.
Yes.
When we played together in Ottawa. He can pull a joke at any time of the day. He recycles them a good bit too, so guys that have been with him a little while, you'll be like, hey, come on, we've already heard this one about 10 times. But there's some guys that are good with jokes. I'm just I might be just running commentary, and most of the time guys find it hilarious.
Do you ever think after your career you might want to get into radio or TV or anything like that?
It depends on what the pay is.
There you go. You're honest.
Oh yeah, you know, you don't really know exactly. I guess I think guys maybe nowadays are a little bit more dialed in and tuned with kind of the post-playing career and kind of planning for that. You know, for me, I like being around the game, so doing something in the game for sure. You know, to your point, I feel like I do well with kind of everybody. I can kind of blend in, you know, with, you know, top guys, young guys, bottom six guys, whatever it is. So I don't know if it's coaching or what it is, but I definitely want to go into something.
All right, let's go back to your beginnings. You were born in Ann Arbor, lived in the Ypsilanti area, I guess. What was that like growing up?
That's cool. I mean, I was born, in Ann Arbor at St. Joe's. I guess that's on the borderline of Ann Arbor, Ypsi. So
It's right there.
I do. You know what? I have a heart. I do say Ann Arbor to most people that aren't from the Michigan area because nobody really knows where the hell Ypsilanti is. But yeah, so grew up around the Ann Arbor, Ypsi area. It was good. I didn't get into hockey until probably I was like 7. Went to like an all sports camp at the Ice Cube in the summer just to get out of everybody's hair and could skate and kind of got into it from there.
Growing up here in Michigan, were you always a Red Wing fan?
Most definitely. Always a Red Wings fan. Grew up at a great time. Stanley Cups back to back when I was real young. And then, team I probably remember the most, the 02 team.
Yeah.
That was really special as a, right around 10 years old for me, just really starting to enjoy the game, to follow that and to watch that team really help develop a love for the game. And then, I remember when I was in high school, I used to always go with a couple of buddies of mine. We would drive and go to B-Dubs in Brighton.
Wow.
It was, I went to Father Gabriel Richard for my sophomore year. And so we had kind of people from everywhere around that area. So we would all kind of meet up there. We watched the whole run. Was it 07 or 08? Yeah. And we would always go out there. So that was pretty cool too, following that along as a little bit older. That was kind of when I was getting into close to junior hockey. So it was really, exciting time to be playing the game at a high level and then watching that.
I was 10 years old when I went to my first Red Wing game, and that was at the old Olympia Stadium.
Yeah.
Red Wings played an afternoon game against the Oakland Seals, and that really hooked me on the game of hockey. So I can understand in 02 when you were 10 years old and you were hooked on the game. But that team, so many all-stars on that team. You had Datsuk and Lidstrom and Shanahan, Yzerman and Hasek, and the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to see that anymore in the NHL, are you?
Probably not. I think the way that with the salary cap structured and, it's hard to put that many guys on one team. I mean, you have Brett Hall, Luke Robitaille. Like, you can just go down the list of unbelievable hockey players all brought together to, win a Stanley Cup. It was just, the level of hockey was amazing. And yeah, you probably won't see something like that for probably ever, but cool to be able to experience it.
Did you have any favorite players growing up, and if so, who were they?
Yeah, I grew up, I loved Shanahan and Yzerman. Those were my two guys. Obviously, Steve being the face of the organization.
And he's your boss right now,
right? Like, honestly, pretty trippy.
Yeah.
Really. You think about, growing up kind of watching and idolizing these guys, and then, not everybody's always happy with their boss. Sometimes you get into, you don't love it. Say you're getting sent down to Grand Rapids, and you're like, well, I got to meet with Steve. Like, this guy's so cool, but not really happy about it.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
it's definitely interesting. But yeah, between Steve and Shanny, I love the way Shanny played. For me, kind of getting into playing a higher level of hockey, he was kind of a guy that, I felt like I liked that style of game and tried to emulate that a little bit with, being a bigger guy, some of the physicality, but still being able to, produce. So he was a guy that I liked watching as well.
You went to Nashville. We're kind of backtracking a little bit here, but you went to Nashville, and I was looking at your penalty minutes as you were, and you really didn't have a lot of penalty minutes. Then you go to Nashville, and I think one year you had 192 penalty minutes.
Yeah. So the way my career has kind of worked out, it's been, it's kind of been a little bit all over the place. I played 3 years in the minors in Milwaukee as a, first round pick, but not like not a guy that was going to blow the doors off points wise, kind of more as a, second, third line center type projected. I had really good numbers in the American Hockey League. And then when I got to Nashville my first year, I had a hard time finding a role. I felt like I was just kind of 8 minutes up and didn't really like do anything positively or negatively. And at this level, there's so many good hockey players. You have to be able to do something that sets you apart. And I got waived to start my second year with Nashville. I played a little bit, like 3 or 4 games in the minors, and then had come back to Nashville. And before I went back after getting waived, at a very honest conversation with Peter Laviolette, that was the coach there at the time, and kind of said exactly that. You have to find a way to make a positive impact on the game. If you do 3, 4 positive things and 1 negative thing, that's better for me than if you just don't do anything. Right. So when I came back, I had a lot of hunger and a lot of drive to just, 1, not go back to the minors, and 2, to provide something to the team. So I had maybe 3 total fights in 3 years in the minors. And that year coming back, that was 16, 17, I fought 13 times.
Wow.
Kind of anybody. Way out of my weight class. Still fighting way out of my weight class.
But you answered the bell, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, provided a bit of a spark, and it allowed me to kind of free up my game a little bit to be able to then do some of the things that I thought I could, be good at, whether forechecking around the net, making plays inside of that style of game. And it really just kind of opened up, my career and allowed me to stay in the NHL.
I talked to a lot of guys that made a living doing that. Stu Grimson, Joey Koser, Bob Probert.
I had Stu doing TV in Nashville.
Yeah, and I sat with him on the plane my first year as a broadcaster, and so we talked a little bit. Tough way to make a living. I mean, if you're an enforcer in the National Hockey League, and more so back then than now because the game's changed. But, fans always want to know, like, what's the dynamic of a fight? I mean, do you go out there and go out there and fight, or do you talk to the other player about starting a fight? How does it all work?
Yeah, it depends. And again, it is very different today than it, was 20, 30 years ago. But, along those lines, for a guy like me who kind of, once you, I guess, open that door, you show the league and the guys across the league that you are a willing, combatant in those situations, and that you will answer the bell. I think it finds you more often than not. And it depends. Like, there's games where there would be games that you go along and you see a lineup sheet and you kind of know, like, I might have one tonight, or a lot of times now it's more situationally in the game, something will happen. And there's some tough characters. There's a few more tough guys that I feel like are kind of making their way back in a little bit. There's some big boys that, they'll find a way to make it happen if they want that. For me, I want to play. I'd rather dictate in terms of that. But if I'm, running around a little bit and, there's a big hit or something like that, or stick it up for a teammate for the most part, that I think is more how it goes these days than before.
Now, out of all the fights that you've been in, who was the toughest opponent that you had to fight? There's probably a lot of them.
Yeah. I mean, my first year, I think I got pretty lucky. I had Sean Thornton off of, he hadn't played in a little while, so he might have been a little rusty. I'll take that, because he's definitely a tough character. But I think, I fought Lucic when I was in Ottawa, and that did not go well for me. He kind of, he's a tough
big,
guy. Mean, tough character, and he kind of threw me around a little bit. But I think the guy that I fought most, that's probably one of the toughest, scariest dudes. I fought Nick Delorier 3 times in Philly, and he's a tough man. He's definitely a throwback, old school. Very respectful. But he wants to put your head into the 10th row.
Did anybody ever teach you, like, you mentioned Stu Grimson when he was with Nashville.
Yeah.
Did he help you out at all? Or?
Yeah, a little bit, tidbits here and there. I think you kind of find, for me anyways, I found my way just in doing it.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't my top priority. I really wanted to make my way as a dependable player in the bottom 6. I could play 12, 15 minutes, penalty kill, produce when chances came up. You got to be able to really capitalize on the few chances that you get if your minutes aren't as high. So I think that more was my priority. I always kind of said, like, if I'm just playing to fight, like, that's not what I want to do. But you learn as you go. You get into some situations where you got to feel your way into it. You got to figure out kind of, are you really made for this too? Like, it's no fun getting punched in the face.
No.
And sometimes you just have to experience that to see if, can I bounce back from that? Or, there's some fear that goes into it. There's definitely a lot of anxiety that goes into, especially you're boxing a guy essentially in front of 20,000 people. Like, you don't want to get beat up either.
That's
right.
It's not like you're on a street corner with just you and him.
No,
right?
everybody's gonna see it nowadays. You got hockey fights and .com and all that stuff, and I think sometimes that can play a little bit of a role in guys not wanting to fight either,
Right.
because at the end of the day, for me, as long as you step up for your team and your teammates, like, the outcome for me isn't such a big deal, but it's broadcast everywhere, right? And it can be a little bit embarrassing getting beat up by another guy, and that comes into play as well. But yeah, Stu definitely talked to me a little bit, but more along those lines too. Like, play your game, and then if it finds you, it finds you, and then you talk to some guys about just some different stuff, grabbing, and really just how to protect yourself. Guys will always ask too. Guys want to mess around at practice and whatever. Like, hey, and I always try to tell them first, like, the first order of business is protecting yourself. A guy like Simon last night, great job by him using his length to stretch his opponent out and put himself in the safest place that he can be in to, one, protect himself, and then to be effective in the fight. So you kind of learn as you go.
You gain a lot of respect, though, I would imagine, answering the bell amongst your teammates, and I think opponents around the league, too, that, if you're willing to get into a scrap, and you do your job and everything, they respect you as well.
Absolutely. I think, as a teammate, I know how I feel when a buddy of mine sticks up for one of our guys or is willing to, you're putting your health on the line, you're putting your face on the line for your team. I mean, that's, you talk about blocking shots and taking a hit to make a play and getting into a fight as well. Like, those are things that, you're doing strictly for the team. And that, for me, gains a lot of respect in my book. I think it, goes a long way with teammates, and you definitely see it across the league. I mean, there's guys that, they have respect for the way that you've had to play to stick around, and your willingness to be a good teammate and to be there for the guys.
Your typical hockey player, you like to get involved in the game physically, mentally. I have to ask you about your teeth, though. Like, you're missing a couple teeth. How did that happen?
I mean, I've been missing these things for a while, and I don't have, it's not like a one-time story, unfortunately. It just kind of happened a bunch of different times, and then at some point it was time for them to go. I mean, I remember camp in Windsor, I think maybe my second year, I hit my head off the top of a guy's helmet, broke the two just right off. So at that point, you're already getting them capped and trying to hang on to them from there, and then keep getting hit by sticks and stuff like that. I remember I ate a puck on a clearing attempt in a World Junior exhibition match somewhere in the middle of Alberta. I don't even know where we were playing. It was definitely not ideal. That was a funny one, because it was the last exhibition game before they kind of cut the team down and all that, and we were going to go back to the hotel afterwards. They were going to have meetings with everybody. Well, I was over at the dentist for 2.5 hours getting my mouth repaired. I didn't even know if I was going to make the team, what was going to happen. I come back, I'm like, hopefully my not just packed up and sitting on the porch. So fortunate to make that team and have a cool experience at World Juniors.
Austin, just going back, everyone wants to win a Stanley Cup, and you had the opportunity in Nashville in the final there, and Pittsburgh beat Nashville in that final. I believe it was 2017.
Yep.
What was it like competing? And you actually had a pretty good playoff run.
Yeah, that's probably the most fun I've ever had playing hockey. We got in as the 16th seed, 8th in the West, and I'll have to rib Kaner about it a little bit. We don't really talk about it. We kind of ended that little run that the Blackhawks had. We swept the Blackhawks, who were kind of at that point a dynasty.
Right.
And, that for our team just gave us so much confidence. We were playing well going into the playoffs, and to close out that series in a sweep to a team that had kind of had our number for a few years really gave us a big jump. But, I think it really set in playing in the Western Conference Finals. You realize how far along you are. There's only 4 teams left. Right. And that kind of set the tone, I guess, for me for the rest of the way. I remember actually game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, I actually slept in and missed morning skate.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I was
kangaroo court got you, right?
I mean, I was like 25. My guys took care of me, though. Like, I remember Ryan Ellis, who I played with for a long time, and some other guys. We had like an optional skate, and there was only like 3 guys that didn't go on the ice, and they kind of like threw my gear on the ground and made it look like all messy, like I had been there. And I love Peter Laviolette. He's done a lot for me in my career, he and his wife both, but I still have not talked about it to this day. Wasn't brought up.
He doesn't know?
Oh, I think he knew.
Yeah.
I think he knew. It was just never brought up. I just kind of met the line coming off the bus, went to pregame meal, kept my head down, ended up playing that night. I scored a goal. I actually ended up having a great series. I scored a few goals in that series, and played in the finals after that. So that could have been a turning point for me, though, for sure.
It's the old adage. They say you always play better playing guilty. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. And I, anybody that knows anything about my past, I've played a few guilty games in my career. So that was one where, like, it wasn't even intentional. I just, I remember getting a call at like 10 o'clock in the morning, like, where the hell are you? I'm like, well, not here. We were staying out in Costa Mesa. That's a 30-minute trek to the rink in Anaheim. There was no way I was getting there. So I just kind of I had to sit there for like 2 hours and wait for the bus to come back. I had so much anxiety. It was not fun, but it worked out.
All right. Nashville, that's kind of a cool city, isn't it? I mean, you played there for several years. And I always say on the circuit where we travel around the country, Canada, North America, Nashville's a pretty cool place.
Definitely a destination that people like to go to. I've made it home pretty much since 2015. Really would have been my first year. Kind of hung around there since then. But it's cool. It's a really good city, not just for the things that you see. Everybody wants to go down to Broadway. Everybody wants to go downtown, do the honky tonks and dinner and all that, which is fun. But when you live there year round, I probably go down to Broadway maybe 2 or 3 times, and pretty much when people are visiting to show them around. But the surrounding area, it's just such a great place to raise a family. We spend summer there. It gets a little hot.
Yep.
It's very much like Michigan weather, except for like 10 to 15 degrees hotter. Same humidity, nasty, but just good people. You talk about that southern charm a little bit. And being from the Midwest, there's a lot of similarities. I feel like just with that little bit of southern charm and just the politeness of everybody, it's a really cool place.
I kind of catch a little twang in your voice there.
You know what I have? It's weird. I have a lot of accents going on. I feel like
multiple accents.
I feel like they kind of adapt based on where I'm at. Like I spent 4 years in Southern Ontario, and then I developed a little bit of that long O.
Yeah.
And then you go down to the South, and I catch myself saying y'all, like, what are y'all doing? Like, I don't know where I picked that from, but, sometimes you're just a product of your surroundings a little bit.
Are you a country guy? I mean, living in Nashville, I would assume, it's a big country place.
I think I am a little bit more now than I kind of was before. My girls are getting older. They're 7, 4, and about 3 months now, or close to 7 and close to 4. And it's amazing how mature and how old they act for such a young age. My 6-year-old is like 16, and she, they listen to music in the car, and she's a Taylor Swift fan, but they love the country music. They can remember the words, and they sing along a little bit. So I am more of a country music fan probably now than I ever had been.
Yeah. And we're wrapping things up right now, Austin, but, you're with the Red Wings now, and I know it's been quite the year for you going from Grand Rapids, coming up here, and, I think you're the second coming of Wayne Gretzky, 2 goals in back-to-back games. I mean, that was pretty nice, right?
Felt good.
Yeah.
Won't lie. Felt good.
Felt good. It's always good to score. But overall impressions of, where this team's heading, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's just, at this time of year, we've put ourselves in a good spot. It's not as good as it maybe could be, but we're right there, and everything's right in front of us. The playoff picture is so volatile down at the wild card level that 2 wins one way, a loss from another team, and you kind of, it can get easy to get wrapped up in the big picture. But I feel like since I've gotten here, the feel around the group and the staff has just been very day by day, and it's good. It's a way that I've learned to live my life through some of the things that I've gone through, is just taking it a day at a time. And this group is doing a really good job of that. Really big games. Everyone's a huge game. Every
Right.
game is like a playoff game. So huge game coming up here against Boston tomorrow. And, it just feels good to be in the heat of the race and to, everybody says meaningful hockey games. I'm pretty sure people are kind of tired of hearing that term,
Right.
but it's true. These games have so much riding on them, and the consequences of wins and losses are so high. This is what we as players play for. You want to be playing for something, and it's just it's a fun feeling to be here with the group and pushing towards that, and hopefully we can put our best foot forward here tomorrow.
Tell you what, it's a pleasure talking to you, Austin, and I'm glad you spent some time with us today and offered to be here on our podcast. And I really wish you the best in your entire career, and also after. Hope you can stay in hockey. You're a great guy, and thanks again for joining us here on the Conversation Line.
Ken, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it.